Welcome back to Connect and Transform. We're picking up where we left off, creating a graphing SVG. These are the only functions we have left to write. The bottom two relate to tooltips, and the upper four relate to representing the data in different forms. In today's video, we're going to complete this function, init tooltip, and we're going to make a few corrections to the format axis value function. I must have been quite tired when I was writing it because there are not one, not two, but mistakes on 3 lines, or 3 sections of code. So the first mistake is that this block here was intended to be one level less restricted. So we've just moved this if statement to the other side of that closing bracket. The other thing is we have a parse int here, and we intended for the closing parentheses to be there. We're just parsing the step value. And then same here, we're not intending to parse all of that as an int. We're intending to just parse that. Lastly, we have this call to string, which is encapsulating everything, including .indexOf. The intention was to take the string value of this and then get the index of the result. So let me save now that we've corrected the format axis value function, and we're going to refresh this page. We're going to be paying attention to the y-axis on the bottom graph here. And we see that it's now completely different, and it's actually being formatted correctly for the circumstance. So now we can move forward and work on init tooltip, and then in a future video we will actually show the tooltip, but first we'll probably go through these. So we'll finish out today's video, init tooltip. We'll do at least one of the graphical representations in a future video, and then we'll finish up with showing the tooltip once there's data there to actually hover over. So if we call init tooltip, it's being called on a specific data node. It's important to take note that there will be some differences depending on what the representation type is. So on the one hand, we might have graphData.type, and recall that this is lowercase. So this might be area, or area stacked, or bar stacked. And I believe that all of those should behave similarly. We will find out in a future video. And if we need to make a minor correction, or if we need to make a third condition in addition to these two, then we'll do that. So area stacked, area, bar stacked should all behave similarly to each other. And then alternatively, we might have line or line stacked or scatter. And I believe that these 3 will all behave similarly to each other. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be setting event listeners on data node. So we're going to say, for the first condition, we're going to say data node.onMouseOver equals, and then it's going to be some function. And that function is basically just going to set the opacity of the data node to 1. So that'll be this style opacity equals 1. I'm just going to duplicate that line, and then this will be on mouse move. And that will be a function where we're going to call show tooltip. So we're going to pass in the event, and we're going to pass in the node itself. And the event is, we're going to make sure that we're capturing it. Okay, so I'll go ahead and duplicate this line, and then the third event listener is going to be on mouse out, is going to be a function. And this third function, we're going to drop it into a separate line. So first we're going to set the opacity. So this .style.opacity. And recall that we have a variable for this. So this is going to be unselected opacity. And then we're going to hide the tooltip. So that's going to be document.querySelector looking at tooltip by ID. And then we're going to say .set attribute and we're going to set visibility to hidden. And then we're going to do the same thing with tooltip BG. So this is the first scenario for area and bar representations. I'm just going to paste that in there for line and scatter, and we'll modify it. So on mouse over is not going to be necessary. On mouse move, we're going to set the opacity to 1. And then we're going to show the tooltip. And then on mouse out, we will set the opacity to be 0. And I'll get into why this is in a second. And then we're going to set the same thing, tooltip and tooltip BG to hidden. So the reason that we're setting opacity to 0 here instead of our unselected opacity has to do with the data node that this is going to be called on. So in the case of a line chart or a scatter chart, there are these hidden nodes that are not visible. And when you hover over the nodes, in other words, like you hover over the intersection of the line rather than hovering over the line itself, and at the intersection of the line is going to be a hidden circle. And so the data node that gets passed into this function in the case of line charts is actually the hidden node rather than the direct data node. So we are setting this style opacity to 1. In other words, we're showing this hidden circular node at the junction of 2 different lines in a line chart in this case. But if instead, if we're looking at a bar chart, we're just talking about the actual data node of the bar itself. But that is the function, and we will demonstrate it in a future video. So next we'll get at least one of these 4 in the next video, and then after that we'll be able to show the tooltip and then demonstrate that initializing the tooltip is actually functioning. And init tooltip will be called in these 4 functions here. And then show tooltip is called by our event listeners. So that will do it for this video. Thank you for watching.